Good morning. Welcome to Light Embassy, taking His glory to the ends of the world. This morning's message is captioned, Don't see yourself better. Don't see yourself better. And our theme scripture is taken from the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 3. Please, I'm reading from the KJV. Paul says, For I say, through the grace given to me, to everyone who is among you, meaning to every Christian. Now he wrote this epistle to a church in Rome, and he tells them, I'm saying this to everyone among you. So this applies to every Christian, not a select few. But Paul says, For I say through the grace given to me to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, as God has dealt to each one a measure of faith. God has dealt to each one a measure of faith. But here Paul says, admonishes the Christians not to think of themselves more highly than they ought to think. The Christian is admonished not to think himself more highly than he ought to think. What does this mean? It means not to think you are better than your fellow brother or sister in the Lord. To think that way is to deceive yourself. The central part of the scripture above is very important. Let's observe. It reads, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think. This suggests that there is a way you are supposed to think, but stay in the boundary of that thought pattern. So God is saying here through His servant that there's a way you are supposed to think as a Christian, but make sure you stay in that boundary. That is, every Christian ought to think highly of him or herself because of what he or she has become in Jesus through the rebirth. But don't go out of that boundary to think yourself better than a brother or sister. That is a deception. That is you deceiving yourself. In your eyes, it may appeal to you, it may be really right to you, but really you are ignorant and you are deceiving yourself. The problem that I find with many Christians and people in the world is that they don't really understand the meaning of that word better. The meaning of that word better. By the definition, the true meaning of the word better, there isn't any created being who is better than another created being. So there isn't any Christian who is better than another Christian by the true definition of the word better. So only God could be better. Because when you say something is better than the other, strictly speaking, means that everything that other thing have. For instance, say item A is better than item B. It means that every good thing, every wonderful thing about item B, item A should have it. All functionalities of item B, item A should have it. All what item B can do, item A should be able to do. But in addition to that, item A should present you with something that item B cannot afford you. That is the true meaning and essence of the word better. That is the true meaning. If even item A has a lot of wonderful things that item B doesn't have, but item B can do something that item A cannot. Strictly speaking, in the strict sense of the word better, item A is not better than item B. But you see, the true meaning of words are not many times reflected in our dictionaries, but that's the true meaning of the word better. And by that definition, there isn't any created Christian who can be better than another Christian, because there are no two fingerprints alike. There isn't any human being who has everything, or there's any Christian who has everything that other Christian has and can also provide or afford more than the other. There isn't any person like that. And that is why, in the true sense of the word better, no created human being can see himself better than the other. Then someone will ask, then what about the unbelievers? They also may have certain good things that another Christian may not have. So why then do we also include them in that? You are right to think the unbelievers, but the unbelievers, the problem is that even though they receive certain good things from God, sin, as Paul says, in my flesh is nothing better. The sin makes nothing better. So they have good talents and everything, but the sin that is in them is what denigrates and take out that glory from their life. That is why the Christian is better than the unbeliever. But when it comes to Christians, there isn't any Christian who is better than the, because when you become a Christian, we have all been sanctified. We have all been sanctified. Who we are, what we are, and what we have are all the doing and decision of God. How you look is because God wanted it to look like that. You see, your height. Jesus says that even the very hairs on our head, they were numbered by God. They were prearranged. God prearranged that our hairs should be this coded. You see. So the way you look, your race, your height, your face, your talents, your giftings, the material resources. You have all these things because God determined it that way. You see that He determined it that way. Not because you made yourself that way. Do you find anyone who, when he was coming to this world, coming through the mother's womb, through labor, said that I wanted to look like this and design him or herself? No. You one day found out through the mirror that you look like this. Everyone one day found out through the mirror that he or she appears like this. You see, you didn't have any power over that. It was not your idea. The potter has right over the clay. You didn't create yourself. The Bible helps us to understand that our good differences, these are differences, but they are good. They serve a good purpose. You see, they serve a good purpose. For instance, when Paul was talking about the spiritual graces, he said that even the weak parts of the body, God has given them rules, you see, so that there will not be any schisms, right? So the potter has right over the clay. You didn't create yourself. The Bible helps us to understand that our good differences resulted from the pleasure, plan, and purposes of God. This was out of His pleasure that God made it that way. So when you read 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7, he says, "For who maketh thee to differ from another?" Remember what I said? I said our good differences. There's a reason why I said good differences. There's a reason I added the word good. You see, there are good differences. It doesn't mean not every differences that is resulted from God. There are certain differences that people brought upon themselves. But our good differences resulted from the pleasure, plan, and purposes of God. He says, "For who maketh thee to differ from another? And what hast thou that thou didst not receive?" Now, if thou didst receive it, why do thou glory as if thou had not received it? 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7. Look at what God is saying to us. That's nice. It says, "For who maketh thee to differ from another? And what hast thou that thou did not receive?" It says, who make you to differ from your brother? And what do you have that you didn't receive? God says, tell him one thing that you have that you didn't receive. Is it your hair? You didn't receive your hair, the color of your hair, the color of your face, your eyes, your eyebrow, the way you look, the money, the giftings, the talents. Give God an example of one thing that you didn't receive, that you created it yourself, which is in you and around you. That's what God is asking you. Then he goes on to ask you this question. Now, if that did receive it, if now after answering that question, you find out that you received everything that you have, then he's asking you, why do thou glory? Why do you think you are yourself that you are better than your sister or brother? Why do you look down and demean that other brother or sister after answering yourself or getting answers for these questions and find out that you received everything? Why then do you see yourself better than your brother or sister? As if thou hast not received it. So what is God saying? He says, anytime you see yourself better than that other brother or sister, it's a confession that I didn't receive it. You see why God cannot take that? You see why God is so strongly against pride and arrogance and rudeness? It's because of this. Because when you assume that position, it's a confession that I did not receive it. But you know that you received it. You see, you know that you received it. So God says, I made you to differ, and what you have, I gave it to you. So don't glory yourself by thinking you are better than your brother, because you are not. This is to say that if you have any talents, giftings, graces, and material resources, it is so because you got them from God. God could have chosen the other individual for that purpose. Be grateful to Him that He chose you for that, and bless that fellow brother or sister with those resources. But don't assume self glory. You assume self glory whenever you see yourself better than another Christian. You see, so that's why God says that when you glory, you are saying that you didn't receive it. So you assume self glory whenever you see yourself better than another Christian. This is why God so much detests pride. It's a confession that is what, when you assume that position, it's a confession that you made yourself that way. It's a confession that I made myself that way. You see, it's a confession that I didn't receive it. It's a confession that I am what I am due to my own doing, and God cannot accept that. That's why God so much detests pride, because pride doesn't give Him the glory due Him. If God made you that way, why then see yourself better than your brother or sister? The reason why some Christians are not happy in life and others are so busy over the things of this world is a lust of the flesh. It's a strive to outdo the fellow brother or sister. This is the cause of all the envy and competitions. This is not wisdom. It's devilish, carnal, and sensual, like James put it. Says this wisdom doesn't come from above. It is devilish, carnal, and sensual. Why do you want to be better than your brother? The question you have to ask yourself, why do you want that? Why do you want to be better than your brother? No, no, no. Why? That is myopic way of thinking. You are not being far-minded if you are that. You see, if you are listening to me this morning in your life, that change your life. Change your life. Change your life. Why do you want to be better than your brother? This pattern of thought is what made Lucifer to become Satan. He wanted to be like God himself. He wanted to be better than all the other angels. Beloved, think highly of yourself. That is important. You have to think highly of yourself because you're a Christian. Think highly of yourself because of who you are becoming Christ. But don't think yourself as better than your brother. God bless you. Or sister. God bless you.